Telemetry doesn't have to be boring or scary, much like many people think. And I love telemetry and have over a decade of experience with it, both in real world, in karts and cars, and also on simulators such as iRacing and Assetto Corsa. The reason I'm making this series is because, like me, you probably just want to go faster and be more competitive with your sim racing. And I think telemetry is an excellent tool to be able to improve your competitiveness, but also improve your enjoyment within sim racing. The Oxford Dictionary defines telemetry as the process of recording and transmitting readings from an instrument. And in this case, the instrument just happens to be your simulated vehicle. But what actually is telemetry and data logging to you and me? Well, telemetry and data logging can often be used interchangeably, but actually telemetry is more like live data logging, where you can see what you're doing and what the car is doing real time. And data logging is where the sim or your computer logs the data as you drive, and then you look at it after the session. And these two are generally used interchangeably, but we'll stick with telemetry for this series just for ease. Initially, when you think of telemetry, your brain might jump straight to squiggly lines and complex software that takes an age to learn. But there's actually a lot of very accessible and easy to use telemetry that people don't often consider. The most simple telemetry that I can think of is the use of delta bars and delta times. The word delta time comes from the Greek letter D, and this basically just means distance. Think about a ghost car in Gran Turismo, or if you've ever used a ghost on your sim. The delta time is the distance from you to that ghost car. So if the delta is negative, you are ahead of it. If the delta is positive, you are behind it. So you want to be aiming to be negative wherever possible. It often displays this information as time, but also can use colours to be helpful. Usually green for ahead and red for behind. This is a very simple form of telemetry. However, it isn't as intuitive to use as some people think, and it can be misleading if read in the wrong way. It's very easy to brake late into a corner and see that green delta bar grow into the negative, which gives you a good feeling. But often we can neglect the exit of a corner. We have to make sure that we balance both the entry and the exit, and take a corner from the braking point or the start of the corner all the way to the next corner, not just to the exit of the corner you're in. Simulators will often give you a number of different options for your reference. You often have optimal lap, optimal sector, best lap, session best lap, session best sector, other references as well. And I'm going to hopefully explain those to you so you know exactly what you're fighting against. When you select optimal sector, your delta bar or delta time will compare you to your best time in that sector alone. However, sometimes if the session has changed, so if you go into a session and it's particularly slower or that much faster than when you set your optimal sector time, then you might want to use your session optimal or session best sector. In qualifying, you'll often have your optimal lap time as your delta. However, some people like turning the delta bar and delta time off completely so that it doesn't encourage you to overdrive. Your optimal lap is the best sector in each of the sectors put together for your perfect lap. Delta times and delta bars are very useful at giving you live information and telling you how you're driving on the lap that you're currently on. However, they do require you to think and drive at the same time. It's also quite hard to use delta times and bars to measure small changes. And also, it doesn't tell you what or why the thing you've done has increased or decreased your lap time. The next form of telemetry, which is often overlooked and neglected, is the use of replays. Either watching your own replays, people in your session, or looking at videos of people who have set fast lap times online. When watching these replays, you're not just looking for where the car is on circuit and for racing lines, however helpful that is, but you can also look for indicators as to what they're doing. Some main things to look out for are braking points. For those braking points, you can use either in-car or out-car cameras, looking for reference points and seeing where they're braking comparing to where you're braking. If they're braking earlier than you, potentially you're carrying too much speed into the corner. If they're braking later, are you braking hard enough and efficiently enough to get the car stopped? Minimum speeds. Next thing I'd look for is minimum speeds. Is their minimum speed lower than yours? Is it higher than yours? Generally, faster drivers will have a higher minimum speed than you in most corners. However, often in slow corners and hairpins, their minimum speed might be slightly lower than yours, but they might be doing that speed for a much shorter period. Top speeds. You can also look at top speeds. So look at the end of the long straights and see what speed they're doing. Not only is this an indication of how well they've come out of the previous corner, but it can also give you an indication of setup in terms of aerodynamics or ride heights. Are they running less wing? Are they running more wing? That might help give you some direction in your setup choices. Lines. Also, make sure to look at the lines they are using. Are they taking different lines, turning in earlier, turning in later? Make sure you look at their steering, see how they're turning in. amount of curbs used. On top of that, you can also look at how much curb and which curbs they're using. Sometimes it may be quicker to use the curbs and shorten the line. Sometimes it might be better to stay off them and get a smoother run through the corner. Also, check the gears they are using. Are they using a higher gear or a lower gear? If you're in one gear lower, is that because you're going slower? Always ask yourself the question why. Understand why the driver who is faster than you is doing what they're doing, because it will help you criticize and improve your own driving. Everything I've mentioned so far only tells you what your car is or isn't doing. At some point we need to know how. How can we drive faster? What specifically can we do with our inputs to make ourselves drive better and closer to those faster drivers? There are many software that can give us this information, like RaceLab apps, Z1 Dash, SimHub, Joel's Real Timing, to name just a few. Using this type of software requires a slightly more planned approach. It will allow lap time gains through the execution of good technique as opposed to reaction to delta or comparison to others. So I'm going to give you a quick rundown of some techniques that will be transferable to most cars. Braking is the most important phase of the corner, and almost always, most time, is won and lost on the brakes. For big stops, you want to go straight to the maximum braking force the tyres will allow and then bleed off into the corner from there. This way you'll be able to brake as late as possible because the car will slow down nice and effectively and allow you to go through the corner at the best speed possible. If you come off the brakes too aggressively, the weight will shift to the rear of the car and you'll end up with understeer. This gradual reduction in braking pressure as you enter the corner is called trail braking. The smoother and more controlled you can do this, the more speed you'll be able to carry through the corner. As for the steering, you want to make sure that you're as smooth as possible, with ideally just one smooth movement into the corner and one smooth movement out. If you enter a corner and you feel the front of the car start to slide, this is known as understeer. If this does happen, just hold the steering where it is. Don't add more lock as it will purely make the problem worse. If you're going through a corner and you feel the rear start to slide, gently turn into it and it should allow you to catch this slide. It's important to be smooth while doing this, as if you do it too aggressively, you'll just spit off the track in the other direction. As we go through the corner, we have to start thinking about how and when we're going to apply the throttle. But with this, patience is key. Much like the steering, we need to be smooth, but also be patient. We want to be soon to full power, not just soon to power. If we get on the power too early in the corner and we're not patient, it'll often cause the front of the car to understeer and will run wide on the exit. However, every part of the corner is linked. If we're getting on the power too early in the corner, it can often be because we brake too early. Your brain will recognise we're going too slow in the middle of the corner, you'll want to get on the power early, and then we'll run wide on the exit, of course, hurting our lap time. So what we're looking for overall is a nice hard initial pressure of the brakes and then gradually decrease that braking pressure as we turn smoothly into the corner. When we get to the middle, we can turn out of the corner smoothly with one gentle increase in the throttle. These techniques will work on almost every type of car and corner. However, we'll be going into a bit more depth in the second of this three-part series, which will be coming out soon on the Traxion YouTube channel. So that concludes our first part in this three-part series on how to read and use telemetry. Hopefully this has given you an understanding that telemetry doesn't always have to be scary. Telemetry isn't always squiggly lines and doing maths. There's a lot out there that is very accessible that you can use right now with the computer and setup that you've got already installed. Keep an eye on the Traxion YouTube channel where we will soon be posting the second in this three-part series on telemetry and how to use it to improve your driving. Thanks for watching today's video. We hope you've enjoyed it. Please leave a comment if you want more of this style of video. And as always, keep it pinned.